Everyone knows that Bruce Lee was one of the most amazing martial artists who ever walked the planet. Today I'd like to share with you one of the tools he used to get there. When I was 17 and a half, I began training in Bruce Lee's martial art of Jeet Kune Do in the backyard gym of Dan Inosanto, who was Lee's assistant instructor in Los Angeles and one of only 3 people authorized by him to teach the art. For me, it was like winning the lottery. Bruce ignited my passion for martial arts when I was 11 years old and saw him in the Green Hornet television series. 6 years later, I was going to actually be studying his art. There was only one class. It was a private training group limited to 12 people at a time, and I was number 12. Not only was I the youngest of the group by far, even though I had several years of training in a couple of traditional arts, all of the other guys were high-level martial artists, most of them black belts. A couple also had extensive backgrounds in Western boxing. I'd read numerous articles about Jeet Kune Do, or JKD as we refer to it, but nothing prepared me for the reality of training in it. We warmed up by skipping rope and shadow boxing, then kicking and hitting training equipment, such as focus gloves, kicking shields, heavy bags. All of these things are commonplace in many martial arts schools today, but they weren't back then. This was followed by sparring, full contact sparring, wearing boxing gloves, baseball shin guards, groin protectors, mouthpieces, and tennis shoes. In my previous training, I'd learned all sorts of ornate martial art forms, and I was taught all sorts of self-defense techniques that were supposedly guaranteed to deal with any type of attacker. But I'd never actually put them to the acid test by attempting to use them in freelance sparring. And I found out very quickly it was an entirely different ballgame. Most of the material I'd spent years learning didn't work under pressure. And the result was that I got hit a lot. It was rough going, not to mention painful at times. But the biggest obstacle I came face to face with when I began training was my own approach to learning, which I developed as a kid in school and which was built primarily around rote memorization. This worked fine in the other arts that I'd done, in which things were put in nice, neat little packages. If the opponent does this, you do this, and this happens to them. But it didn't work for JKD, which is all about problem solving, self-discovery, and figuring out things for yourself rather than relying on the instructor for answers. My mind was not used to thinking that way. I loved everything about JKD, but my learning kept stalling. And there were numerous times during the first several months of training when I questioned myself as to whether or not this was the right art for me. One day, following a particularly frustrating workout, as I was taking off my training gear, I glanced up at a large sign hanging on the wall of the gym, upon which was printed one of the core credos of Jeet Kune Do. It said, "The truth in combat is different for each individual in this style," and was followed by 4 principles that Bruce developed and used in his approach and study of the martial arts. I'd seen and read that sign dozens of times before and not really given it much thought. But this time, when I looked at it, bam! It was like a solid right hook punch to my brain. Only instead of the lights going out, they came on. I knew in that moment that the 4 principles on that sign offered me the solution to my situation. The first principle was research your own experience. Each training session was an experience for me. So I began to look at them, explore them, assess them by asking myself questions such as, what did this experience mean to me? How did it make me feel? What purpose or value does this experience hold for me? I knew I had to be open and honest with myself. Let the experience speak to me and listen. I also knew that I had to take full stock of the experience in its entirety, not just the good parts or the parts I liked. Every experience was valuable to me and offered me a way to discover myself and increase my self-knowledge. The second principle was absorb what is useful. Now, I understood that attempting to copy or imitate Bruce Lee, or anybody else for that matter, was definitely the wrong way to go. But I also recognized that if I saw somebody do something that I thought could make me better, or if I came across something that I felt had value with regard to my own training, I should feel free to absorb it into my own personal structure, integrate it with my being. It could be something physical, such as the incredible sense of timing that Daniel Lee, my JKD big brother, had when sparring. Or it could be mental, such as the cool detachment that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu legend Rickson Gracie demonstrated when fighting an opponent in the UFC. It didn't even have to come from martial arts. Exercise physiology, psychology, modern dance. My guiding maxim was, it doesn't matter where it comes from. If you understand it and you can use it, it belongs to no one. It's yours. When I was considering absorbing something, I'd break it down and analyze it. What is it about this technique that makes it effective? What makes this training method useful for me? How will cultivating this mental attitude make me better? I'd experiment with it and play around with it if need be. Once I understood how and why it was useful, I could cultivate it, refine it, modify it if needed, and turn it into something that was of benefit to me. On the flip side of absorb what is useful, the third principle was reject what is useless, which deals with refusing to accept or letting go of something that's not useful to you or that's having an adverse effect upon you. Again, this could be something physical or mental. For me, one of the hardest hurdles I had to overcome was mental. See, I was raised with the idea anything worth doing is worth doing right or well. And I was continually being told that. Over time, I became self-critical if I couldn't do something well or get something correct right away. And that mindset was restricting me, especially when it came to my training. I realized I had a decision to make. I could either hold on to that attitude and let it continue to cause me problems, or I could dump it. I chose to get rid of it. But I knew also this was not something that I could do overnight. So I cultivated my plan of action to detach myself from it over time. It took a lot of work and a lot of effort, but I did it. And the freedom it brought me was incredible. The final principle was add what is specifically your own. This one took a little more thought and introspection. What could I bring to Jeet Kune Do that was specifically my own? The answer was me. I could bring my own attitude, attributes, and personal preferences to whatever I was doing. I could put my own personal stamp on the art, infuse it with my own thoughts, ideas, and points of view. By doing this, I would cultivate my own personal martial expression. And that is what Jeet Kune Do is all about. These 4 principles changed my mindset and helped me develop and cultivate a whole new approach to not only learning, but living. And I think that they are invaluable tools that you can use to help enhance your self-development. They'll help you to explore yourself and get in touch with yourself. Figure out what works for you and what doesn't. What's useful to you and what's not. And what makes you unique as a person. You can apply them to whatever's happening in your life, whatever situation you find yourself in, whatever problem or challenge you're dealing with. When you put these principles to work for you, your life will be richer and more rewarding. You'll be willing to step out of your comfort zone, explore your capabilities, try new things, and in the words of Bruce Lee, honestly express yourself. When you apply them to obstacles, adversities, or barriers you encounter, they can help you turn stumbling blocks into stepping stones. Research your own experience, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, add what is specifically your own. 4 principles that offer you a dynamic prescription for personal growth. Thank you.